What if Sam Raimi got to direct Spider-Man 4? This is one of the most frustrating among the canceled movies because it happened at a time where superhero films were still kind of not really off the ground. This is before Avengers. This is very early stages of the MCU were taking place. And I try not to think about it that much because sometimes I get kind of annoyed when I think of what's come out since. Many times when these series are rebooted, there's a belief that in starting from scratch or starting over, you can possibly make something new and better. And I really don't think what's come after 3 has been any better than what we had before. I should also say I'm not some prophet. I can't directly state what Raimi would have done entirely. This is just me going off of what we know about the movie and then adding in the things that I believe would have made it, if not the best of his films, probably I'd say a well-regarded one. It's just what I think would have taken place to make it address some of the issues of 3. Now we know that 4, had it been made, would have started with a montage of Spider-Man taking out these different, supposedly C and D-list villains, and this would include Mysterio and, just a set of them. And I would have it revealed very early on that Peter was able to basically live both of his different identities through a means of having on and off days, right? Some days he's Spider-Man in the morning, other days he's Spider-Man in the evening, and he really has just accepted that he can't be everywhere at once. He's only one man. And this film, just to clarify, also takes place about 2 to 3 years after the third movie. You have to skip a few years because at this point, if the movie came out when it was supposed to, this would have been 4 years in real life from when 3 came out. So I think it's realistic that there'd be at least a several year time skip. But in those years, Peter has not gotten over Harry. He thinks about him a lot. He feels like, this is the second person that was close to me who, because of my actions, I played some role in the demise of. There's a lot of guilt in terms of him thinking, should I have told Harry that I was Spider-Man instead of, it being revealed indirectly through Doc Ock. He really just has a lot of mixed emotions about that passing. And I would say that you would certainly feel that void that was left by the death of his best friend. Now, as this is going on, you have Vulture, who, old man, not different from the comics. There was, I'm forgetting the channel's name, but it's some Doug Walker affiliate, and they made their own, What If Spider-Man 4 Happened video, where it was like a sequel to their version of Spider-Man 3. And their plot was to have Vulture going around, trying to become younger. I like that idea, but I kind of want to lean more into the horror elements of it, where he believes by taking the lives of younger people, he can make himself younger. But so far, it has not yielded the desired results. And he's basically just abducting and killing people, at night for nothing. It would be wrong even if it worked, but the fact that it doesn't makes it seem even more like their lives are just being taken away for the sake of this man's pipe dream. And his daughter, Felicia, who, I'm just going to scrap the Vulturous thing. Raimi backtracked on that. He said that she would have been Black Cat, so I'll go along with this claim. But she does little things for him. She goes and steals items and money and just the various things he would need to complete his little schemes. And this is all done out of a love for her father. She doesn't like that he's passing away or that he's, elderly. But eventually in her different heist, she ends up in the crosshairs of Spider-Man. And, there's I don't want to say a flirtation, but there's certainly like I also relate to having a secret identity. And, maybe you should find a more honorable way to go about acquiring money. And it's really more of a thing where he's empathetic with what she's doing, but also recognizes that it's wrong. And her arc over the course of the movie would be shifting from having this kind of blind support for her dad to being willing to stand up and rebel against what he is doing, which is, again, causing the deaths of all these different people. Or even if she's morally gray, not an entirely good person herself, she still has, some core set of principles that's clearly more than you could say of her father. Um, and I should also say that in that 2-3 year period, I would have it to where Peter and Mary Jane are like living together, but she's not what she was during the original trilogy, where because she's familiar with what he does and truly has embraced this idea that the city needs him, she's not as argumentative, really tries to help him in pretty much all the ways. And I guess I wanted it to be like their relationship in the comics that was actually very healthy, where they were just supporting each other, which is what I think, any decent romance would be. And, you know, I would certainly not have her be a damsel in distress for the fourth movie in a row. Um, but yeah, this is also like at the same time, while Peter is being, kind of assisted with his studies with Gwen, who I mentioned, my tragedy of Sam Raimi's Gwen Stacy video, just kind of how underused she was in 3, and that introducing a character like this at the time that they did was such a missed opportunity, because if you're not going to have her as Peter's love interest, she can still serve as a very smart person that he can, work with and get to know. And I would establish that in the years since 3, she has really become friendly with both Peter and Mary Jane, where there was like this misunderstanding and, just a general not attempt by her to be in a love triangle, and just a respect of their boundaries, and vice versa, they admit that their own like wrongdoing. So it's just a group of people who've all kind of like healed together from that exchange to become this like friendly trio. And of course she cannot replace what Harry was to Peter, but she certainly has helped to fill the void a little bit. I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but it is what it is. Now the climax of the movie would be, because I'd have Vulture fight Spider-Man at least twice. I'd have him fight him the first time, just completely outclasses him. But it's when Black Cat shifts over, because she just doesn't think what her dad is doing is okay. She's really not fine with being the thief for a murderer. It's when she switches over that she reveals to, Peter and I guess Mary Jane, as well, just who all is involved with trying to stop Vulture, what is causing him to have these power-ups, which is this, this suit that he has, the different components they can use to disable it. And it would be in this like dragged out brawl fight that he would have with Peter, where he's kind of like got him on his last leg, that it would be either some device that Gwen and Peter made, or hell, even Black Cat herself, that gets the suit to just stop working. And that's when, while he's trying to kill Peter, he ends up falling to his death, because we never have Spider-Man kill the villain. They always die by their own hand, usually. I would end the film with Peter and Mary Jane getting married. You have, Gwen in attendance, Aunt May, and then far off in the corner, in like the little area where nobody can see her, you have Black Cat in costume watching the ceremony from with like a little bit of a smirk smile, just happy that everything worked out, while she goes to figure out who she is. Having Vulture be this person that wants to get younger and go back to his past, and then having Peter in this grief about Harry, has like this shared theme of just not being willing to let go of how things once were. When you get older, people you cared about pass away. When you get older, you don't move as fast. You might lose your vision. There's all types of different health issues that start to arise. But what is generally agreed upon by other people, not me necessarily, is that you have to move on from these things to still be able to function. And I really believe that if you're going to have Harry just stay dead after the third movie, you would want it to factor into the fourth one in a meaningful way for Peter's arc to keep growing out the character. And one thing I really liked about the Raimi trilogy that I can't say for TASM is that each of those films was meant to be a complete movie. You can watch the first film, the original 2002 Spider-Man, and there's really nothing there that's like, in the next film he will have to do this, right? It has this very conclusive ending where the villain has been defeated. He has made the decision to keep his secret identity secret and not pursue this romance, this girl that he's wanted to be with since he was a kid. It's got a very strong core message and self-contained story that really, even if it weren't seen with 2 and 3, would still make it worthwhile to experience by itself. And then with 2, the only part of that would need to be resolved is Harry becoming the goblin after his dad, which is arguably, if you wanted to you have your own interpretation, you could just say that he refused to take his dad's position because he makes no definitive declaration, I will get my revenge on Spider-Man. And then, I don't need to explain 3. That's conclusive as well. So I like how each film it's something that can have a sequel and did in, each case except for 3. But it doesn't exist to set up something else. So my version of 4 would be a very self-contained story. There's the option of having sequels, right? If you want to continue Black Cat's arc, if you want to show, Peter and Mary Jane finally married and, living a happy time together and what villains and new issues they may encounter, you can do that. But it's not something you have to. And I wrote it that way also because there was the possibility that even if 4 were made, there would just be that, and then we would have had a reboot, just a few years later. Like, you were basically delaying the inevitable. And at least with this iteration of 4, there's some semblance of closure to just like the whole story, where you have this man that lost his uncle and then his best friend, but through perseverance and through the assistance of the woman that he has fallen in love with, and then this daughter of the last of the strongest, deadliest villain he ever battled, and even the person that he tried to get mixed up in this love triangle when he was, under the influence of that alien, he was able to survive. I should also say that I would want, because one of the things I try to do is write a sequel that's consistent with either the tone or characterization of the previous movies. One of the things I like about the Raimi trilogy is that none of the protagonists or antagonists, with the exception of Doc Ock, who find out Peter is Spider-Man, are directly told by him. So I would, over the course of this film, this hypothetical 4, have it to where Gwen, Black Cat, and Vulture all find out his identity at various points, just through some kind of circumstantial thing, as opposed to him directly saying, that he's Spider-Man. And unlike a lot of the other stuff I do, I might be tempted to write at least some novel version of this, because I do kind of like the story. And then we could also talk about, what a hypothetical, Raimi Spider-Man 5 and 6 would have looked like, just going off of this template here. Because I do think that there is some value in looking at the story that we received and then the things that we could have had and saying, hey, that might not have been too bad. And I maintain that out of all of the superhero films that could have come out during my lifetime, I'm not going to pretend I'm this very old man, but I certainly, existed before there were any live action Spider-Man films. Out of any of these superhero films that could have come out, since the 2000s onward, that did not, this is the one that has bothered me the most. I feel like you really saw a series that was kind of just coming into its own get struck down, because we have this obsession with trilogies, right? Ending things with 3. And there were more stories to tell within that universe. So this is just my proposal. I don't, again, if people like the other stuff that's come since, that's fine. But I'm really just tired of things ending in 3s in ways that I don't find to be that organic. Like, I maintain that Harry's arc in 3 is not good because they kind of had to rush it, right? If they had just let him have let 3 be to where it's like Vulture or some other, villain with Sandman, and then Harry's kind of like friendly towards Peter, but then starts to go like descend into madness and I must avenge dad and all the rest of it, and then have him be a villain in 4. That would have been a more organic and properly paced arc than just at the end of 2. I can't kill my best friend. 2 at the start of 3. I'm coming after you, Pete. Just you have to plan stuff out and kind of ingratiate the characters when you're doing a serialized story. Just like with this, I would have Black Cat switch sides, but she wouldn't fully cross over to being a protagonist until the 3rd act, because she would spend the 1st act, fully committed to that. 2nd act is where she starts kind of like questioning his motives, and the 3rd one fully switch over. But then even as a hero or anti-hero, she still is not fully integrated into that friend group of, Peter and Mary Jane and Gwen. She would, if we do 5 and 6, become more friendly towards them, as the trilogy were to progress. So those are my ideas. I think this could have been a hell of a movie. Needs a little bit fleshing out. These are just bare minimum stuff I've just laid out here. But yeah, it's sad that potential like this just got wasted.